Madhabi Puri Buch, the embattled chief of the SEBI, resign? Has her exit become inevitable amidst a volley of allegations literally hitting her from all different directions every day? I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Our focus today is on the embattled SEBI chief, Madhabi Buch. The Congress, in particular, seems to have it out for her. In its newest allegation, Congress leader Pawan Khera has alleged that Madhavi Puri Buch was receiving rental income from a company that was being investigated by SEBI. This is only one in a series of allegations that has been leveled against Madhavi Puri Buch ever since the Hindenburg report first alleged that there was a conflict of interest because of Madhavi Puri Buch's alleged links with offshore entities of the Adani group. Now, at every stage, Madhavi Puri Buch has denied the allegations. But today, there is talk of a parliamentary accounts committee looking at this issue and possibly summoning the SEBI chief for questioning. In the midst of all of this, we have a situation where 500 SEBI staff members have alleged a culture of intimidation at work and have also asked for Madhavi Puri Buch's resignation. To talk about the financial, ethical implications of this case and whether Ms. Buch's resignation has now become inevitable, let me welcome our newsmaker on the program today. Subhash Garg is with us. He's the former finance secretary, has been a senior bureaucrat in the government, and is also the author of a book, We Also Make Policy. Mr. Garg, it's always a pleasure. You've been saying early on that perhaps the resignation is inevitable. But since you said this, she has not resigned and the allegations have only grown. What do you think is the most serious allegation against her so far? Subhashji.
See, Barkha, I don't think we need to categorize something as serious or something as non-serious. The litany of allegations which have come ever since Hindenburg came out with that second report targeting her specifically, I think it has all accumulated now into such a vast pool of allegations, indiscretions, unexpected kind of behavior and all, misconduct, if may I call it. So I think all of this adds up to something where her position had become untenable a couple of weeks back when I wrote about it. Increasingly by the day, it's just not sustainable. I think the government as well as she herself are have already got into a quagmire. They just, if the drift continues the way it's continuing, I think it'll do more damage to her and the government than her continuance would be. So I think it's very, very untenable. She has become a lame duck.
She has become a lame duck is a big statement. Do you believe the government is also making a mistake here by not coming out clearly and disassociating themselves from her?
See, the government perhaps cannot disassociate itself from Madhavi Buch, more particularly because she is seen, at least in the case of Adani's, she is seen as doing something what probably the government wants, and therefore the cause is common as far as the government and Madhavi Buch at this moment is concerned, at least in the case of Adani. What makes the government's position a little awkward, to my mind, is in their own judgment, is whatever is coming out with respect to Madhavi's conduct, disclosures, rentals, incomes, this and that, which I suspect the government was not aware of. I've said this earlier, 2 years I had watched her as the Secretary Economic Affairs and also the member of the board of the SEBI. none of those disclosures which she said at the time of the Hindenburg report were made. These didn't come to the notice of me as the secretary of the department or the member of the board. So what kind of disclosures were made? And so this is what I think the government's position. The government might be feeling uncomfortable what is tumbling out every day, assuming, which is my serious belief, that the government perhaps didn't know about these kind of things. But since is perhaps doing what the government is interested to do as far as the Adanis are concerned, I don't think they'll feel comfortable in disassociating the government from her or even asking her to resign.
So this is very interesting. Let's take the last point first. You say her disclosures did not come to you. Now, this is very, very important because if we look at how this controversy started. Let me just fix this first. This controversy started with the Hindenburg report. The Hindenburg report
Right.
alleging links between her and offshore entities of the Adani Group. Since then, many different allegations have come. The allegations include the Congress alleging that she has received ESOPs and money from ICICI after she joined SEBI, that she held two jobs in financial services. That and the latest is that she has been receiving rental income from a company that she was probing. Now, at every stage, she has actually said that disclosures were made. You have just made the very important point that the disclosures did not come to you. Can you elaborate on this point?
See, what Hindenburg brought out in that second report were a couple of very serious kind of allegations. Number one, there was an allegation that she and her husband had investment relationship with one of the offshore entity, which incidentally was also supposed to be investigated as part of the Hindenburg's allegation against Adani. Now, if you have investment relationship, uh, and this is not typical investment in shares or bonds or deposits, which are more normally understood. This is an offshore entity, and
Yeah.
what kind of investment that entity is making and where that investments are being made, these are all very serious issues. And if you're making that kind of investment, the expectation is that you know those fund managers very well and the kind of investments which that entity is making. So this investment, this should have been disclosed completely. Ideally, this should have been disposed of even before she joined as SEBI whole time member. But if you are not disposing of that for market reasons or whatever, a full disclosure has to be made, and then a very conscious decision has to be taken by the board and the government whether she should be allowed to continue with that investment or not. That would require disclosure, discussion about the disclosure, and the entire thing. And since maybe 4 months, I joined after she was appointed. That was 4 months later. But these kind of disclosures must be continued to be made in times to come as well. So I don't think this disclosure was made before my predecessor, or it was certainly not made at the time when I was there. Likewise, those two consulting firms, which she owned 100%, that Singapore entity, and 99% that Indian entity. Now, this
Yeah.
is virtually engaging in a second business. If you are owner, even if you don't do the day-to-day consulting or other work, as an owner, you are directing. The owner gets all the benefits and the profits of that consulting. So you cannot in any way disassociate yourself, even if you say that we made it dormant. Now, fact of the matter was that that was not dormant, because the registrar of companies papers disclosed that this was receiving incomes. So all of these kind of decisions, that read kind of disclosure was not very serious in my judgment, though. As a professional, you have to also disassociate yourself with that policy making. But the two allegations relating to the consulting firm and that investment decisions, I don't think the government of the day or the SEBI board, if these disclosures were made fully, would have allowed these to continue. So I think that is where it all began. Uh,
Yeah. Can you still hear me, Mr. Garg?
yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay, so you are making the all important point that the disclosures, at least when you joined 4 months after she had, it was 4 months later, but you don't think that the disclosures were available with your predecessor, and certainly not in continuation with you. If I were to ask you what is the most serious allegation against her, and again I will recap them. It started with Hindenburg saying that she had these links to Adani offshore entities, and Adani was being investigated by the SEBI. Her investments were not necessarily revealed to the Supreme Court, which seems quite egregious when all of this was brought before the Supreme Court. But it has moved on to all kinds of other allegations, right? The Singapore consultancy, her possibly holding two jobs, while at ICICI, the allegation that she's continued to receive income from ICICI, though ICICI has denied that. Now, a Wockhardt-linked company that the Congress alleges she has received rental income from. SEBI's own staff is up in arms against her. If you look at all of these allegations, which to you is the most serious?
See, I think it began with that the investment relationship with the offshore Adani firm, and in itself, perhaps it would not have been as damaging as it in the normal circumstances. It should have been treated as a very serious one, but it became graver the moment she became the the in charge of investigation against Adani's, and
Again,
those
yeah.
those investigations were not completed. In retrospect, when we discover in August 2024, after about 20 months of the allegations being made, that those investigations were not completed. In the Supreme Court also, at various point of time, Supreme Court tried to set the deadline, but those deadlines were not respected. And at one point of time, before the expert committee, SEBI made a statement that we have run into a wall as far as getting information from the offshore entities are concerned. And it so emerges that you are an investor in that one of the offshore entity. Now, if you have
Yeah.
that kind of confidence in making investment in an offshore entity and you take a plea that you are not able to get information, this sounds absolutely indefensible. So I think that is the serious incident, in my judgment, more serious as far as its implications about SEBI's primary role of investigating the market sort of distortions and insider trading and those things are concerned. But to my mind, the consulting assignments, these two of them, were perhaps the most damaging. You couldn't have continued with the two businesses. And later on, what is coming up now, it in fact adds to the gravity of that. Every one of them, like Vokard allegation, if it is true
Yeah.
that she had rented out without disclosures, with disclosure, or is this rent appropriate enough? Does it represent the market value of the property, or is it exaggerated? Is it higher than what it is? If that turns out to be the case, that it is much higher than its market value, then you are again seen as dealing with a regulated entity in a manner where you're taking part of the profit. So I think all of these adds up. Nothing is something you can dismiss that this is frivolous or this is not
So, so, so,
to
so,
be
so, so,
taken.
so, ex- So explain to me why the government has not. You are saying that the reason that the government has not disassociated themselves from her is because Adani has been an instrument by the opposition to attack the government, and Adani has been an instrument by the opposition to attack Madhabi Puri Buch. So the government will think it's giving in to the opposition if it disassociates itself from Ms. Buch. But the government could quietly tell Ms. Buch to go.
See, that is an option I can understand if you probably want to limit your damage or something. But as I said earlier, the government's position. If you look at the government's response right from the second report or the Hindenburg report, the government has said there is only one statement which I have noted from the government side. When Secretary Economics Affairs said that he has nothing further to add to what
Yeah.
SEBI and Madhabi Buch has said. And from then onwards to today, there is nothing official about a statement from the government about this entire affair. Now, this is a strategy which has been used in the past. You can brazen it out by simply ignoring to comment or trying to see to be seen as unconcerned or something. But I think this is not really advisable in today's circumstances with the government not being in such a complete control of the narrative, so to say. Uh,
Yeah.
cannot probably brazen it out, and the more you brazen and try to do it this way, I think more you lose credibility, and more people start shifting away from seeing that the government's or the SEBI's stand is something they can live with. So, of course, this is the government's decision, the way they want to deal with it. If they think that it is a lesser loss making kind of strategy, to continue with her and not bothered about what the market or, but as I don't think this is sustainable. As you mentioned in the initial remarks, if the PSE starts discussing about this, PSE calls her, starts questioning, it becomes
That's right.
more and more murkier by the day, more and more indefensible by the day. The best course is to appoint an independent commission. If you believe yourself that she has not done anything wrong, then you appoint independent commission or a committee, not the government controlled one or the opposition controlled one, and then go through this process, which unfortunately, as the facts seem to be coming out, will probably reveal that defending her or not asking her to go would increase your damages, your losses every day.
Let me ask a last question to you. All of these allegations, are they conflict of interest? Or, as Sucheta Dalal argued in an interview with me, hypocrisy? Because she said, as SEBI chief, Madhavi Puri Buch has investigated other companies for far less egregious allegations than she is facing today. Are these conflict of interest or hypocrisy, or are they corruption? Is this conflict of interest or is it corruption? I know that there's a thin line between the two, but even so, it's an important separation. Are we talking criminality, corruption, or lack of ethics?
Increasingly, it's becoming all the three.
So, corruption, you're not ruling out corruption.
Yes.
And what seems like corruption to you in all of the allegations?
I, for example, if it turns out that the rental income is much higher than what its market value is, even if you've disclosed it, then that's an act of corruption. It's a regulated entity. You have passed orders. You or your subordinates have part. Even if you have recused, um, if that is higher, the receipt of consulting incomes uh, is is certainly not defensible. It's grave misconduct. It may not I think it is criminality also, but it is grave misconduct. So I think all these three seems to be increasingly becoming relevant in her case.
Is it your instinct that she'll resign before the PSC actually calls her? Because today there is news that the PSC is planning to call her.
I thought she would resign. She would resign, or she would have resigned
Much
about
earlier.
2 weeks back. So if it becomes increasingly unsustainable, I don't think she would be having peaceful nights. It's a very difficult situation to be in. Earlier, she tried to sort of put out a statement that there is character assassination, etc. In the latest series of allegations, you've not found her making any
Say
response.
much.
Now, if you are not responding, then you are probably mulling over something, how to deal with it. And
Yeah,
if you are embattled in a situation where you would be sort of answering to hundreds of agencies, then that
yeah.
life is not worth living. So I think maybe she would be
I,
mulling it over.
I have one last question, and it comes from our audience. A pertinent to ask, that's the name of the audience member. Among the explosive conflict of interest allegations, why has SEBI's board not even hinted at an internal investigation? They've been very muted. The silence around this matter is deafening. So I think this is an important question because while Miss Butch may not resign, there is the question of SEBI's own board and SEBI's own board holding her to account. And if they're doing it on the quiet, the public hasn't heard about it yet. Miss Butch is not the only one who runs SEBI. There's an entire board there. What do you say about their conduct and their response thus far?
See, the board has three constituents. One is the government representative, the Secretary Economic Affairs and the Secretary Corporate Affairs. Uh,
Yeah,
in situations like today, it appears that they have decided to go completely by the government's line of approach on this issue, and they are not exercising their independent responsibility as they are normally supposed. So they have become literally neutralized in my judgment. The second segment comes from the internal sort of officials of the SEBI. So a
yeah,
couple of executive directors are the members of the board. That is the second segment. They are normally by their internal discipline and all not likely to act um, in a manner unless there is somebody audacious enough. We have had one gentleman earlier in the SEBI who had complained against the chairperson of that time and had taken that battle. So there are very few such internal candidates or internal board members. And the last one is, I think there are only two at this moment, or one, who are independent from outside. There is, by the way, one RBI guy also, who I would put in the same bracket as the government two representatives. So the third one, which is who represents the outside, who is neither the internal SEBI candidate or from the government. I think that gentleman was expected to be more vocal, but for whatever reasons, either he's in a hopeless minority or whatever, he has also decided to remain quiet. So,
Mr. Mr. Garg, this is the market watchdog of India, right? If
yes.
the market watchdog's chief is under a cloud and the board is neutralized, she's a lame duck and the board is neutralized, what does that say about the integrity of the markets right now?
See, the market unfortunately seems to be running on
Yeah.
steroids and other factors than what you would expect from the integrity of the markets, or very I think those are the very different factors. This is unfortunate. We may have very unfortunate consequences of the way the markets are running. But in that, if the credibility of the institution of the SEBI is seen as not making any difference. So, if you associate to the larger whatever is happening in the small IPOs, small companies IPOs, the IPO market, and I think this is a difficult time in terms of well-regulated market institution, uh, and this I think in times to come we'll perhaps regret that we saw such times as well.
Yeah, a great situation. Thank you for being so plain spoken as ever. Subhash Garg, always a pleasure. I think I agree with you that even if she didn't resign 2 weeks ago, my gut is that this is not a tenable situation anymore. I just don't see how it can carry on. But well, stranger things have happened. Let's see what happens. Thank you, Subhashji. Thank you and take
Thank
care.
you very much. All the best. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Bye bye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.